Holocaust Education Week Committee, and on behalf of the United Jewish Federation of Toronto and the Chaim Limburger Holocaust Education Center, I welcome you to this evening's program. First of all, I need to thank Toronto Alpha for organizing and hosting this event. There are two co-sponsoring organizations that I want to mention, and you will hear from representatives from both of them shortly. One of those is the Equity Studies program here at U of T, and the other one is Shirley Beinu, who will tell you about themselves in a moment. And we are Holocaust Education Week, the overall program. We have about 163 programs like this throughout the GTA during this week. So we're especially grateful to our presenting sponsors, Great Golf, and our lead sponsor, Atrocity Foundation, the Azraeli Foundation, and the Elizabeth and Tony Comper Foundation. And we're very proud to have CTV and the National Post as our media sponsors. This is the 34th year that we're doing this, and the theme this year is collaboration. And our programs, including this one tonight, will explore the various ways in which individuals and groups collaborated with the oppressor or trying to save people from the oppressor. Holocaust Education, we need your support. Put in this commercial. Your generous donation will allow us to continue to offer outstanding educational programs for many years to come. There are donation cards available at the table there, as there are copies of the program of Holocaust Education Week. If you have any electronic devices with you, I can't imagine anyone does not nowadays, please turn them off. And we hope you can enjoy this evening's program. Again, welcome. Thank you. Expect myself back full.
Good evening. My name is Harriet Eisencraft. Can you hear me? Yes. I am on the board of Congregation Shir Lebeinu, which is a small, progressive, egalitarian Jewish faith community serving people mainly in downtown and midtown Toronto in various sites. We are wandering Jews, truly. I am here this evening with our president, Jamie Flagel, and others from the congregation. And our shul has, sorry, I'm going to be a bit more light, so I'm going to just bring this a little closer. Yeah, that's great. I'm here this evening to tell you that our shul has partnered with Holocaust Education Week for many years, mainly honoring Jewish survivors of the concentration camps in Europe and listening to their stories and research, and also hearing from their children and their grandchildren. We have presented with them on such topics as women in the Holocaust and the experiences of gay children of survivors. When we heard about tonight's focus on comfort women and the painful experiences of mainly Asian women during World War II, we were very interested in participating and educating ourselves on this particular facet of the history. Learning about the sexual violence committed against these women in no way diminishes the memories of European Jews who suffered and perished in the Nazi Holocaust, and that includes the Jewish female sexual slaves of the Nazis. Rather, it broadens the conversation. It broadens it to include as many as possible of those who were affected by the long tentacles of the Second World War. It also helps us to see how sexual violence and abuse was a point of shame in many historical periods, and unfortunately which continues right up to the present day around the world. We thank Mary Siklos and the Holocaust Education Week Committee for bringing us to this opportunity and giving us the opportunity to co-sponsor this event, and we are honored to be involved with Alpha Toronto in doing so. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is June Larkin, and I am the Director of Equity Studies here at University of Toronto. And on behalf of the Equity Studies program, I'd like to welcome you to New College and to this very important Holocaust education event. Equity Studies, as a program, examines social justice issues in a variety of local and global contexts. We share Alpha's goal of doing education that provides a foundation for global citizenship. An important component of our work in Equity Studies is historical analysis. Students learn there are many versions of history, but that some stories are more dominant than others. They learn that doing social justice work requires uncovering stories that have been silenced, dismissed, or ignored. This is the purpose of tonight's event, to provide a forum for the stories of the women across Asia who were mobilized into Japanese military sexual slavery. Our work here is about reflection, support, and reconciliation in solidarity with the Comfort Women. At the same time that we recognize the horrors of their experience in the military sexual slavery system, we celebrate their strength and their resilience. Tonight we have much to learn about gender violence, human rights, and the power of testimonials. I thank Alpha for inviting Equity Studies to participate in this event, and I thank our presenters for the stories they are about to share. Thank you. And welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Alpha is very glad to be here tonight to present to you what about this issue of comfort women or the sexual slavery issue during World War II in Asia. The reason why we have such a short name, ALPHA, is because the name is just too long. It represents Association for Learning and Preserving the History of World War II in Asia. Many of you sitting here, after going through secondary school, high school, even universities, I believe you have not learned probably anything about World War II in Asia. You're not alone. Even for people who were born in Hong Kong, like myself, Flora and a number of others, history stopped in 1911. So none of us know this history until we came over to North America, until I went to Albert Einstein College of Medicine, until I learned about Jewish Holocaust, that I said there were similar things that happened in Asia, but has been totally forgotten. So after I came back from New York City, I started my own family practice, and I still keep on going to Holocaust Education Week and to different synagogues to listen to the testimonials of survivors, and they touched me greatly. And that is when I started to learn about my own heritage, my own history, about how this atrocity happened not only in the West, but very much so in the East, around the same period during World War II. I started the organization Toronto Alpha in 1997. And by 2004, we were not doing a lot of promotion and awareness raising until we found and discovered that only through knowledge and education that you could have world peace. These two are the foundations of peace. So our mission is really to bring World War II history into classrooms in North America, particularly in a diverse city like GTA. We really think that world history should include both hemispheres. And as Canadians, doesn't matter whether your ethnic origin is, there is a lot to learn. Similarly, not Jewish myself, the Jewish Holocaust has a lot to do, has touched me greatly, and I think that all people in the world should not forget what had happened during the atrocities in Europe. There are two differences. One major similarities and one major difference. The similarity is there are deniers on both sides of the globe. The major difference is in the Western world, the deniers are the fringe elements of the society. In the East, in Japan, the deniers are the government and a very powerful right-wing faction Japan. Only 2 weeks ago, Japanese government was still talking about denying the atrocity committed in the sexual slavery issue. They wanted to withdraw the only apology statement from the cabinet of Japan, so-called Kono statement. That was in 1993. But throughout the last 20 years, Japan has been trying to correct history or to rewrite history, to fight history. Only in 2007, the then Prime Minister Abe, he became Prime Minister again, this time again. He publicly denied the existence of the coercion, of the forced confinement, forced sexual slavery during World War II in Asia. His comment, of course, aroused great indignation around the world and were attacked by a lot of media, and he ended up finally apologizing, you know, to who? Not to the Kung Fu woman, not to the victims, but to the President of the United States, George Bush. And interestingly, George Bush accepted his apology. But that aroused a lot of activities on both sides of the border, south and north of the border. And our counterparts in the States and we ourselves in Canada lobby our parliament to pass a motion condemning Japan to refuse to acknowledge the atrocity they committed in the sexual slavery issue during World War II. And indeed, both sides succeeded. In July, the American Congress passed a motion to condemn Japan exactly on this issue. And on November 28, the same year, 2007, our parliament passed unanimously a motion to urge Japan to acknowledge the facts of sexual slavery, the Kung Fu woman issue during World War II in Asia. Now, this is a little bit strong and a little bit too long for my little brief introduction, but I wish that I could give you the background so that you can understand what these people are presenting, what they're talking about, why it is still so much an issue, why it is still so much causing so much pain and suffering, and a lot of argument and diplomatic role in East Asia. We haven't, although the war seemed to be ended 70 years ago, it has never ended because there has been no closure. Tonight we are presenting to you a film called, it is not a film, it is a trailer of a film called Within Every Woman. It is done by Tiffany Hong, a woman and an organization that Toronto Alpha give initial funding to get started. And it is a film which is like any others because she personally went to Asia. She went to the Philippines, she went to Korea, she went to China to live with the Kung Fu woman victims, the survivors, for months, and photograph, film them, what were their aspirations, how they were doing after so many years after the suffering, and the film is very, very touching. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the trailer. Thank you very much.
I had set out to document the atrocities of World War II. But then I heard for the first time the term comfort woman. The war hasn't ended for these women. Now in their 80s and 90s, they still struggle to be heard. This led me to China, South Korea, and the Philippines.
Kay nagambal ang hapon nga, go, go, go. Natabo sa akong gid nga kaman, 14 years old. Da wala ka idea nga kung ano na dayon ang matabo. Ga tinangis, ga singgit, pero daw mga lalaki. Nadlok ako, madulong. Ko, hindi ako ya. Hindi ako.
就把我们3个人都放开了，把我关起来，关进窑洞里边了。天黑时就过了7个人吧。
7个。
你出来我觉得那个欺负我很多。
평인이 생각해보면 알 거야. 10살 살이면 어른인데. 어른에 한 배에 옷 뺏기려고 그러고. 반항한다고. 그냥 때려도 이렇게 때리는 게 아니라 이렇게 때려요.
Sinipa ako, tinikwang. Pag mata ko, dugoon ako. Gadugo na.
배만 4번을 수술을 했다면 어느 정도인지 알지 않겠어. 일본 사람들이 얼마나 지독하고 나쁜 사람인지 수술하니까 못 낫게끔 남기려지.
摔的我就不会走了，就跑了，跑是出来，跑是回的，出来在两面也不晓得怎了。When the war is over,
Pag uli ko, Bow, si ang akon mama, nagtiyabaw, Alila! In-English ako. Si Papa, ay naman pagsugiri. Si Mama, gilang nakasayod.
my mother told me, let us keep this secret.
"从来不接。他我们小时候，他会一个人哭，他唱歌他都哭掉泪，我不知道我妈是怎么了。
他就走对象，你要是走啊，不和他盘结交，不盘亲，他妈妈或者不能睡了，不盘亲。不说了，不交代话了，看见说呢，痛快的问。
好像这个村里头，他是父母亲不对待子女们说这些这种事情。他们说时候我在一旁能听到的。他说这家这是一种在羞辱的事情，就感觉说也是一种在羞辱的事情哇。
Don't worry, we go somewhere quick, okay? Okay.
Does it help to know that you have people who've gone through the same thing that could be...
Yes. When we meet together, we even have chat that what happened, that guy, we keep on chatting. Oh, sometimes we cry also at the time. Yeah, of all women, why did it happen to us?
If you could wish for anything, what would it be?
If I can tell my children all about it, I would be happy if they will accept what happened to me.
처음엔 텔레비를 보다가
의료금 필요 없다. 의료금 필요 없다. 사제금 내놔라. 사제금 내놔라. 일상을 원한다. 일상을 원한다.
생각을 하니까 위안부가 죄가 아니라 내가 죄가 아니라
Kaya ako nasawa, napatay lang hasta ako mga kabataan. Tel, hari ko dito sa upo ni. Gitsang tanan tisa, patawaragin ko ha. Huwag na ako magsugid kay basi bayaan mo ko. Ha? Sugidan ko na mga kabataan. Tanan.
我再到年纪了，这不是在日本直到现在也不配。我还活得小，看他们是拄拐杖。
지나오기 시작해가지고 이거 아니었다. 같이 싸워야지.
하늘 속에서 빛을 못 보고 사람 노릇을 못하고 살았어요. 그러니까 학생들 얼마나 행복한지.
나 여기 온 지 벌써 7년이요. 7년이. 일본 사람이 거짓말 하지 말고 진짜로 나와서 사과하는 거 봤으면 좋겠지. 내일 수요. 천사지피라. 내일은 진짜 사람도 많이 와야 하고.
그렇도록 한마디도 사과 한마디 없고. 지금 말이 글쎄 80 넘어 90 넘어 그런 사람들이 우리들이 다 죽고 없으면은 저 사람네들 끝나는 줄 아는데 아니야.
성도 이름도 모르지만은 한국으로 오세요. 오래오래 살아서 한국에서 만납시다.
How I wish to be in Korea and join your rally and sit in that big chair. I hope I have that good health to go there to be with you. So we know each other. Salamat.
These women are connected by much more than their past. Something stronger unites them, something the Japanese soldiers couldn't destroy. You still gonna come?
Yes.
They said that you're too sick.
Stand for anything. I'm strong.
I know that history refers to them as the comfort women, but to me, they have become the grandmothers. Even after decades of silence, they have taught me it's never too late to speak out.
왜 왔냐? 이번에 안 오면 안 되겠다 싶어서 마지막으로 생각하고 왔습니다. 일본의 정부한테 진실한 말씀을 하셔서 이 문제가 해결돼야 저 인생이 끝나는 거고 kung asin kaya kakon nga kuan istorya.
So I hope everyone is moved by the documentary trailer and is intrigued to learn more and to do more as well. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joy Lee Ryan, the project coordinator at Toronto Alpha. In 1942, the Japanese Imperial Army invaded what was then known as the Dutch East Indies and now Indonesia. During the time, about 170,000 Dutch civilians were interned at the prisoner of war camps. The fierce Japanese occupation lasted for 3 years, and unknown to most, many Dutch women, like Thea's mother and aunt, were forced to be sexual slaves at the prisoner of war camps. Tonight, we have the privilege of having Thea van der Waal, a Dutch prisoner of war survivor who wrote the memoir, I Thought You Should Know, and blogs tirelessly at Coconut Connections, bravely share with us her memories, her discoveries, and her passion for social justice. Interviewing her tonight will be Joshua Pelzer, a professor of ethnomusicology from the University of Toronto's music faculty. Later on this evening, he will also be sharing with us his experience and research on music in the lives of Korean survivors of Japanese military sexual slavery. And can we please put our hands together to welcome them on stage?
Thanks for having me. What I just saw didn't do me any good, so I hope I can keep my tears together. So, well, I'm Dave van der Waal, and it's nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, maybe we could, we have around 10 minutes or so, but I think we should, so perhaps, but I want you to really use that time as you like. So perhaps you could just start out by telling us a little bit about your early life.
Okay, I was born June 3rd, 1941 in London, and everything was fine. The war had broken out in Europe, and my father was Mill. That's a Dutch expression of Royal Dutch Army, and 7 days into the war, their ship, after torpedoing 4 transport ships from the Japanese, they run online. And all but one man survived. Getting already now. So my aunt was pregnant, and she lived in Surabaya, and my mother was living with my dad in Bandung. And my father sent my mother right away to Surabaya to be with her sister, because he thought, you know, if the Japanese invade Java, she's maybe better off to be with her sister in Surabaya, because her sister was pregnant. You know, it would be better to be there. So my mom packed a little suitcase for me, her and me, and we went to Surabaya, and we never came back. So in November, end of October of 1942, we were all put into a prison camp. The Japanese called it a protection camp, and if you said something else, you would get a terrible beating. So I actually was only 1.5 years old by then, and my cousin was in the meantime born May 1942, so she was only a baby, and then I have another cousin who was 4 years old. So we all ended up in Muntilan in prison camp. So, and ask me some more questions.
You told me a rather remarkable story about how you found out about your mother and your aunt's experiences much later on. So maybe you could share that with everyone. Maybe you should tell me.
Okay, by the time I was, I think 4 years, I was 4 years old, and I remember sitting, we were in Muntilan, in a camp, it was a former Catholic college, Saxon-Pierre College, and there was a church on the property, and the Japanese had set up office there, so all the officers were having offices there. So I often was sitting outside, waiting for my mother to come out, and she often cried when she came out. But me only being 4 years old as a child, you have no idea what's going on. So your mother is telling you, what? So your mother is always telling you, oh, I fell, and she always made a joke out of it, and she told me constantly later on in life. She never told me what happened in the church. She always said she had to clean the church. So in 2009, when I was writing the memoirs, I visited my aunt, the last sister from my mother who was still alive. My mother died in 2003, and that's actually when I found a pouch with all kinds of letters and things from Indonesia. And then things came back to me. And I went to the Netherlands and I visited my aunt, and then I showed her what I had done, and then she said, well, it's time for you to know. That in the church, your mother was raped, and her sister as well. So I was terrible shocked, and my aunt was terrible. She said, I had promised that I would never tell, but because you were writing the memoir, I thought I should let you know. So you can imagine the big shock, because you know, you hear all about this. Never thought in your wildest dreams that your mother, it happened in 2009, so it's still very fresh for me. So it's still, I still can't believe this has happened to her. So in 2010, my book came out, and I was so in shock that I only wrote a little line in my book about it, because I just couldn't believe it.
Well, first of all, thank you for, obviously this is a very difficult thing to talk about, and you kept apologizing, but I feel like if it's us, we should be apologizing to you somehow. And also, in reading your story and listening to you talk, it occurs to me that your mother was a survivor of this experience as well. So I wondered if I could ask you to, and also you as well, of camps, and you somehow, now you're in Canada. I mean, there's definitely a story there as well, a long story of survival and resilience and so on. And I wondered if I could ask you to say a little bit about that. What happens to your mom after 1945?
Oh, 1945, when finally the war in Japan was over, the Japanese didn't tell us, so we were still in the camps. They didn't tell us till the end of August. And then we wanted to get out of the camps, but we couldn't get out of the camps because a new war, the Indonesians wanted to become independent. So we had to stay in the camp, but by that time my mother we had moved to another camp in the meantime. I forgot to tell you that because the Japanese had sent us on the 1st of August to Banjabiru because they wanted to collect as many women and children from the concentration camp as possible in one place so they could liquidate us, because that was the plan. The plan was to liquidate all the Westerners on the 27th or the 26th of August, and the Americans found out, and actually that's one of the reasons why they had the A-bombs on Hiroshima. That was the first bomb. Because they said we cannot have all prisoners of war being liquidated because the men would be liquidated as well. So my mother was by that time very, very sick. She didn't know what was going on. So we were flown. This is actually a bit funny because my mother told later on to me, we were flown by a transport plane, and we'd never been in a plane, and we were shot at, but we didn't know that. So the pilot said, "Don't worry, ladies," because we were all women and children, and they were sick and skinny. He said, "We are hitting the tree tops because we're flying very low." But we ended up in Bandung, and then my mother went into a hospital, and I went into an orphanage house, and I was in there for 3 months, and my mother was 3 months recuperating in Java. And then in 1946, a man came to visit my mother in the Java Center while she was in hospital, and he happened to be a friend of my father who worked on the Burma Railroad tracks. My father passed away there, so he was looking for my mother, and he made sure that we could get a ship back to the Netherlands, and we left Indonesia on the 30th of March 1946, and we arrived in Holland on the 25th of April.
So as you can see, we've only got up to 1946. So I look forward very much to reading your memoir. If there was, do you have any closing thought, or just, there's been talk in the film trailer about reparations or apology. I mean, your own political, your own personal, wishes for reconciliation. and for the just sort of lasting comfort of yourself, of your mother?
Well, once a year we go to the Netherlands, and then we join the Foundation of Japanese Honorary Deaths in The Hague, and we always go to the demonstration. The Japanese always close the curtains as soon as we arrive, because they don't want to see the truth. And we have all banners up, and then afterwards we meet in a hotel and we discuss the day's events. Now all what we are after is justice and recognition. That's all we want.
Well, I think we're certainly at our time here, so I just want to thank you very, very much for your courage. So my story is that since 2002, starting with a year and a half in 2002, and every year between 1 and 3 times since then until the present, I have been working in my field, which is ethnomusicology. Is just a fancy way of saying that we study why music is important to people. Working for these last 12 years with survivors of particularly Korean survivors of the Japanese military comfort women system. And I have, in that time, recorded around 400 to 450 songs of survivors of the Korean comfort women system, or of the Japanese military sexual slavery. And those songs are from all over the place. But since I also have around 10 minutes, the basic point of my research is to understand how music is a resource for people, and particularly in the context of all the conversations about the comfort women and reconciliation, and as a historical issue, and as a collection as actual people who are still living in this world, and so on and so forth, as survivors. My perspective has been to listen to ask them what their favorite songs are, rather than to require certain kinds of, require them to frame themselves with respect to the comfort women issue, and just to find out about them as people, and because they are people who have found a way to live through this unimaginably difficult experience. And I draw my inspiration, obviously, from a lot of the scholarship in Jewish and European Holocaust studies. Since I don't have time to talk about any of that, really, I wrote a book about it. And you could look into that if you were at all interested. But I wanted to move very, very quickly to songs that I recorded, songs of the comfort women survivors. Lee Young-soo showed up at one of the demonstrations in the video trailer that you saw. Lee Young-soo was taken as a comfort woman when she was 15 to Taiwan. And she's from you see her on the street in Daegu, which is her hometown in southeastern Korea. And this is a song she sang to me.
그 군인이 장교인데 이제 그 사람 죽으러 갈 적에 노래를 가르쳐 줬는 게 강고리리 그여 타이완 하나래 김바노 구모노리 고에데요 다레다떼 미역그르 히도사에 나갸랴 나이테 구레루와 고노콩아 히도리다 2절 강꼬리 구요 신직구 하나래 김바노 구모노리 보에데요 다레다떼 미역구루 히도사에 나갸랴 나이테 구레루와 도시궁아 히도리다. 도시고 이름 지어줬어요.
This is a Japanese military song, or bunka, or kunga in Korean, and it's from the kamikaze battalion that her quote-unquote comfort station was attached to, and it was the song by which she found out where she was, because she was imprisoned there and didn't know that she was in Taiwan, and so she found out through that where she was in Taiwan. But it's also almost cinematic. And she tells this in the course of her testimony, and it comes right in the middle of her testimony oftentimes, and it's a moment where she met someone who was somewhat other than some of the horrors that she experienced during the war. So it's important for that reason as well. So the next person and the next song that I really do apologize for moving so quickly, but I want you to hear a bunch of different voices. Really, that's more important than anything I might have to say. Pak Turi was, I should say, she passed away in 2006. Very, very dear friend of some of us in this room. She smoked a lot. Changmi, if any of you remember chocolate-flavored cigarettes. Pak Turi is from Miryang, which is also in the southeast, where most of the Korean survivors were taken from, the particularly underdeveloped and exploited part of the Korean peninsula. And Pak Turi was also taken to Taiwan, and came back and married and had a very difficult life, a very tragic life actually after the war as well, but was kind of just a pillar of strength and intensity, intense sorrow and intense joy, intense. One sort of stereotype of the comfort women in South Korea is that their sexuality was destroyed, and Pak Turi really put a lie to that idea and really reclaimed her sexuality through her singing life, and also imagined the world as she thought she might like it to be.
마음은 아니 이 속에 마음은 15살인데 나같이 너희가 무슨 말고 뭐하고 이마에 늙고 뭐하고 이마에 나를 죽으노 개야 개야 전둥개야 흐리는 청갑살개야 누름막을 그여 넣어줄 지게 내 배가 불러서 그를 줬나 야밤 중에 수박 먹으던 치지 말아보를 맞나? 맞다 누름막 그줘야 우리 영감이 있는데 우리 신랑이 있는데 딸 신랑이 없어. 안 믿어야 우리가 오빠이가. 우리 신랑이 있는데 너무 신랑이 오는데 걔가 짓었구만 못 오는 거 아이가. 그래 내 배가 보는 거를 줬나. 야밤 중에 분수방을 좀 지짐하고 있더라. 그래서 내가 누른밥을 잃었는데 와 우리 신랑 얼굴을 네가 짓노. 이미가 기쁘다. 얼씨구나 좋고 참말로 좋네. 아니 너희는 못하리라.
obviously a lot to say about that, but no time. But simply, just very briefly, one time I did an exhibition of these songs in downtown Seoul, and I was encouraged not to put that one in because the Japanese right wing would find justification in it for the idea that comfort women had been prostitutes or something like that. But there's a long story here of someone really, the terrain of trauma in cases of sexual violence is one's own body. So trying to make sense of one's own, to try and have some governance over one's own body is extremely, I think, important. And it's also, I think, very, very important to listen to survivors when they tell jokes. That's how I want to put it as well. And the last one, just very briefly, Pae Chun-hee, who passed away earlier this year. Pae Chun-hee was also from southeastern Korea and was a comfort woman in what was at the time called Manchuria and later became northeastern China. Lived in Harbin after that, lived in Shanghai after that, tried to return to Korea after in the middle, actually, of the Chinese Civil War, which was also actually right after the Chinese Civil War in 1950, which was, of course, when the Korean War broke out. Didn't return to Korea, but moved to Japan and lived in Japan for many years. And had this incredible sort of Gone with the Wind, like sort of transnational, really story. And as you can see, she was 85 in this picture. Someone who took her own beauty very seriously, and somebody who was very beautiful and very youthful, as her name Chun-hee, or Spring Princess, would have you think, and was also a professional singer for many years. And she sang this song, in addition to around 100 others. So she goes on to explain the lyrics, but she sang this song for us in a song party with me and a bunch of Japanese activists and a bunch of Korean activists. And she sang a song in Japanese, but which is originally a Korean song, probably the most popular Korean song in the world. A Japanese version which was popularized during the colonial period and the war. But in any case, and there's a whole story, very complicated colonial and wartime story to go along with this song, but the context in which she sang it, to speak to the theme of Holocaust Education Week collaboration this time, was to try and use music as a way to help people who live very far apart and who have very tremendous gulfs of experience, Japanese activists, Korean activists in this instance, to somehow be able to see eye to eye and to recognize that they have things to share and they have bases for communication and mutual understanding and that sort of thing. So obviously, I usually have around an hour for this sort of thing, but I'll just stop right now and thank you very much for your attention.